Hello and welcome to Face Off here on France 24. 3.5 years after his defeat at the presidential election, Nicolas Sarkozy has finally taken the step many of his lieutenants had urged him to take if he wants to have a chance of winning next year's presidential election. That is, admit his mistakes. He did so in a book published this week and amid a flurry of media appearances. Is this a desperate move to salvage his chances at a time when he's struggling in the polls, or is it merely, and for once, a sincere assessment of what he achieved and what he failed to do in his 5-year mandate? To discuss with me Nicolas Sarkozy's mea culpa and what it means, Jean-Marc Gonin with the Figaro magazine and Philippe Turle with Radio France Internationale. Jean-Marc Gonin, this took him a long time to do, but Nicolas Sarkozy finally came out and took a look back at his mandate.
Yes, it is a very difficult exercise for him. He had to admit, as you said, a lot of mistakes. He has revisited his first mandate step by step, giving in that he made faults all along his path. With a lot of sincerity, I must admit, he's gone a long way to say that he shouldn't have acted like this. He shouldn't have insulted some man in the agriculture fair in Paris when he said "piss off your," etc., etc. So he confesses big mistakes, but he had to in some way he had to, because this book has appeared thanks to the advice of one of his main advisors, Pierre Giacometti, who is a pollster and who has measured his unpopularity and what people don't like about him. And he had to take those steps to try to modify his image. Otherwise, he has no chance to run again for president.
Philippe, we understand the context. Let's just add that Nicolas Sarkozy is the head of the opposition party. There will be a primary next year to determine who will be the candidate for the presidential election. And Nicolas Sarkozy is not in the best position to win that primary.
Well, Nicolas Sarkozy would like to recreate the situation that he was in 2006, before the election of 2007, when he was elected president the first time round. He's saying, well, look back to Jacques Chirac in 1994, a year before he was elected. There were only 11% of people in favour of him then. No one would have put a penny on his election, and a year afterwards he became president of France. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do something similar this time round. I'm going to bring out this book. I'm going to confess to all the mistakes that I made, things that I didn't do right, measures I didn't take or took too late. And that will put me in a stronger position to run for president and to win the election next year. The problem for Nicolas Sarkozy is that he's already been president. People know what he's like. And people don't want him back. And if you look at the opinion polls, as you just said, Pierre Giacometti, who was advising Nicolas Sarkozy to write this book, knows what the opinion polls are like. There's only 1 in 5 French people who would like Nicolas Sarkozy to come back for a second mandate. So this time round, we're a year ahead of the elections, and Nicolas Sarkozy is waking up in the morning and he's saying to himself, I want to become president again. It was an injustice that I was defeated in 2012 and François Hollande shouldn't have been elected in my place. I'm going to come back and do it again and do it right this time. But there's a big problem. There are other people there who are also wanting that position that he's after. And one of them who really wants it is the former Prime Minister, Alain Juppé, who is far further ahead in the opinion polls, far more popular in France than Nicolas Sarkozy. So this book, he hopes will put him back in a strong position, but I think it's a little bit too little, too late.
But as you say, I mean, he also celebrates his successes in this book. It's not just, I made mistakes, I'm just really...
But the big piece is more negative than positive.
Right. I mean, what struck you? Are there some things that he is saying I shouldn't have done, and by implying that he would do it if re-elected could really help him? On immigration, on
yes,
the labor market.
You mentioned 2 areas, two issues where he says I didn't go far enough.
the 35-hour work.
35-hour working week, different matters on immigration. He feels that he could have gone a lot further than he did. But this, once again, is very difficult, as Philippe said, regarding his own the public opinion, and especially because the first step is his own camp, to win the hearts and minds of his own camp. And even in his own camps, he was so towering. He was a powerhouse in his time. I mean, he had all levers in his hands, and he didn't achieve. So it's very difficult to tell the people, I was wrong. I should have gone a bit further. People would say, "Well, you had everything. You were in the driver's seat. You had the steering wheel in your hands. Why didn't you drive the car into this direction? Why so late now?"
We're gonna take a listen to one of his critics at the time, the centrist leader François Bayrou, who is basically summing up a lot of the criticism against Nicolas Sarkozy. Let's take a listen.
Does saying I was wrong on almost everything mean you're now right on almost everything? That's the big question.
That is exactly right. He's in a dilemma, Nicolas Sarkozy, because his book could bring him some support, but it might not bring him any support, because people are going to read the book and they're going to say, okay, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that.
But he's going to say lots of people are reading the book, so I'm still interesting
them. Yes, they're interested, but they're going to say, okay, well, you're admitting to what you didn't do. This book is being written as a platform for what he's going to do. So what he's hoping is people will say, well, you didn't do this, but you're going to do that, okay, we'll vote for you. But what might happen, and that is where this is a bit tricky for Nicolas Sarkozy, is that people will read the book and they'll say, okay, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Well, in that case, let's find somebody new who will do what you didn't do last time round. And that person, for the moment, appears to be on the right. In any case, it appears to be far more the persona of Alain Juppé than it does Nicolas Sarkozy, whom people don't want to come back.
Still, the primary is supposed to take place in November, so there's still a lot of time left, and he certainly believes that he can regain some ground. That being said, what might hurt him is that his reputation was built that I'm not a talker, I'm a doer. And so by saying I wasn't such a doer, that could also harm him in a way, because people say, well, we don't like you as a personality, but at least you're doing what you're supposed to do, and that's not the case.
Well, yes, but it's a bit far-fetched. I mean, when you watch the first talk show he went to, the first interview he gave on television after, the day before the book came out, you could feel that he was restraining the kind of energy, almost violence that he has in himself. So I think he is trying to give the impression he's a more measured, more a rounder personality than he has been before. So I wouldn't say people will object to the fact that he shows less energy. It's not a question of energy. It's more the question of being brutal and aggressive that has been retained as negative in his personality.
Right. Just before we get to Philippe, we're going to take a listen to Nicolas Sarkozy in that very media appearance you just mentioned. And he is instilling some doubt about whether he will indeed be candidate. Let's take a listen to the former president.
Whether or not I will run is not an automatic question. The weeks and months to come will give you the answer. I will only run if it serves a purpose, of course.
He'll run. That's Nicolas Sarkozy in all his splendour, keeping us in the dark until the last minute. He brought out the book. He now has taken over the running of the party. He's not just doing that to be nice. He's doing that because he wants to run for president. Now, we've been quite negative about certain aspects of this, but something you have to remember about Nicolas Sarkozy is that he's a political animal. He's a political killer. And when he's on the campaign trail, he will go hell for leather to try to win that election. And he is a confrontational character who cannot be taken on lightly. So when this competition gets going, when he runs in the primaries, if he's selected as the candidate, then we will see the Nicolas Sarkozy come forward that we saw in 2007 when he became president.
So you're not counting him out?
I'm not counting him out, but I'm saying it's not the same fight. In 2007, he was on his own. Everyone was supporting him. In 2017, he will not be on his own. Well, he will be by then, but in 2016, he's not on his own. There are lots of other people who who think that they could do as well as, if not better than, Nicolas Sarkozy. So it's a fight to get that nomination as candidate for the Republican Party, but he is going to try his hardest to get it. The big question now is how long is he going to carry on being president of the Republican Party before he stands down from that position to make it clear that he is a candidate for the election of president next year?
Very quickly, we still have...
There is something funny about what he said, what Sarkozy said about hesitating about running. We have a parallel with Hollande. Hollande says to the nation, I might run again, but I might also not if the unemployment remains high, etc. So you have on both sides the main contenders for the moment who are sort of in the fog, not saying if they run or not. So,
but we probably know that they certainly want to run.
They both think about it.
They both think about it every day, probably.
Every day.
We'll have the answer pretty soon. Thank you very much to both of you, and thank you for watching this edition of Face Off here on France 24.